Most teachers will agree that the actual teaching part of the job is, in fact, the easiest part. It's everything else that any traditional teacher preparation program can't prepare you for that is the most challenging. But the one thing everyone can agree on that makes everything better is having a solid classroom management philosophy and plan. There are lots of different ideas about what this looks like, but just know that it's never one size fits all. It's also never intended to be set in stone because just like everything else in education, things are constantly changing and evolving, and you need to adapt accordingly. Classroom management for elementary teachers looks very different than it does for middle or high school teachers. The benefit elementary teachers have is that students are still young and typically most of them want to please you. They inherently want to do the right thing and they crave the approval of their teacher. Establishing good classroom management routines in elementary school will set students up for future success. You'll often hear parents talk about how excited their younger students are to go to school and how much they like their class. As an elementary teacher, it's wonderful to be able to capitalize on that excitement. There are ways to motivate and engage students and still maintain order. Different teachers will have different classroom management styles. No matter what your style, being able to maintain a sense of order is what enables all students to thrive in their learning environment. Here are some ideas you might want to consider implementing in your classroom management plan. First and foremost, build relationships. Of all the classroom management tips you hear about, this is the one that overwhelmingly seems to work best for most teachers, no matter what grade level you teach. Ask your kids about some of their favorite animals, colors, movies, you name it. Write these down and reference them now and again. You'll be amazed at the smiles you get when the kids realize you remembered something specific about them. Holding small group or one-on-one lessons and conferencing is also a great way to build relationships with students. Secondly, you'll want to set expectations. Whether you start with a class at the beginning of the school year or you come in at any point mid-year, it's important you let the students know from the get-go what your expectations are. Be sure to include expectations for completing assignments, working with other students, communicating with teachers, and overall behavior. Middle school and high school teachers will thank you later if you set expectations for students starting in elementary school. Next, consider collaborating on classroom rules. Rather than dictate to students what the rules are, have them help you create the rules. Students can work in groups to come up with a list. Typically, kids come up with a wide variety, but ultimately you can group them under broader titles such as Be Respectful or Practice Safety. Once these are decided on, transfer them to a poster and have the students sign their names to show their agreement. I used to call this my classroom constitution. Another idea, which is sometimes easier said than done, is to provide structure. Kids thrive on structure. School, by nature of having to follow schedules, has a certain amount of built-in structure. However, even within set blocks of time, your students should come to expect a certain pattern of events. For instance, perhaps you have a 5-minute warm-up activity, followed by a whole group lesson, and then you hold small group conferences. This may not be the case every period, but the general structure of class should be fairly predictable. Going along with structure would be writing down the day's plan. It may sound simple, but it helps when students know what's coming next. Having the day's schedule easily visible really helps students who might get anxious when routine is broken. A classroom management technique that is popular with the students themselves is allowing for voice and choice. Students like to feel that they have a say in what goes on in the classroom. Not every lesson or activity lends itself to this, but where possible, ask students what they would like to do. Give them options. If they need to demonstrate learning, give them a choice of activities, such as creating a poster or a drawing, creating a song, or recording a video or a podcast. This will also help you address the needs of every type of learner in your classroom. Next, I'd say it's always helpful to have options for early finishers. All teachers have heard it before. I'm done, now what? In order to prevent a lot of downtime, which can lead to behavior problems, have a variety of activities on hand for those who get done early. These may be enrichment activities, STEM activities, digital activities, or a combination. Another idea is to incorporate SEL activities into your classroom. Social emotional learning has become quite the buzz phrase over the last few years. Whether you've adopted a school-wide program or have chosen smaller independent activities, SEL helps keep students engaged. It doesn't need to be formal or take a lot of time. For instance, practicing meditation or breathing exercises for a few minutes every morning can set a great tone for your students' day. One thing that worked very well for me was to give rewards. Whether you use an online program to keep track or you use a more traditional ticket system, students love rewards. It's nice to have a reward system in place for the whole class as well as for individual kids. These don't have to be the same rewards either. Finally, personalizing instruction can be a great classroom management tool. We hear this a lot, but it's true that children will procrastinate less, be less bored, and be more focused if they are doing work that is on their level. Sometimes this requires a lot of work up front, but the rewards are worth the time and effort you put in. No matter what your classroom management philosophy or style, don't forget to have fun. It's okay to play games with your students, start singing, or to be silly now and again. Students enjoy seeing this side of their teachers. Also know that classroom management involves a certain amount of trial and error. A lot depends on your personality and the personalities that make up your class. What works for one group of students one year is not necessarily going to work for a different group of students the following year. Similarly, what works for your coworker down the hall with his or her students is not necessarily going to work for you and your students. Be patient with yourself and your students when trying different strategies. Keep in mind that not all students may have had good examples of classroom management in the past, and undoubtedly you will be thrown some curveballs. It will take time to find what works best for everyone, but keep at it. Your students may not realize it right away, but they will thank you later.